Picture the plate. There is hot fish just out the grease, collards still steaming. And right there on the side, a plain slice of soft white bread. Your auntie calls it light bread, your granny keeps it in the bread box. And at the barbecue joint, they'll hand you 2 slices without asking. It's more than habit. That loaf carries a century of history. Captivity, hunger, migration, public health propaganda, and the hustle of Southern foodways that turn scraps into survival, and survival into culture. Let's take it back. During enslavement, the daily ration wasn't French boules and farmhouse loaves. It was corn, cornmeal, and a little pork if you were lucky, cooked into cornbread, pone, ash cakes. Wheat flour bread was rare in enslaved cabins. Plantation records and later reminiscences show cornmeal with fat pork or herring as the default, with wheat far less accessible for the enslaved. That's why in Black and Southern vernacular, white wheat bread earned a special name, light bread, meaning yeast-raised wheat loaf, not the everyday cornmeal bread of the quarters. When you could get it, it felt like a break from the ration, lighter, softer, modern. Jump to the 20th century, when light bread went industrial. Wonder Bread debuted in 1921 out of Indianapolis and became one of the first sliced loaves to go national by 1930. The greatest thing since sliced bread wasn't just a line, it was literal marketing triumph. A cheap, uniform, endlessly soft product started showing up everywhere, from corner groceries to chain stores in growing Black neighborhoods during and after the Great Migration. Convenience mattered, price mattered, and suddenly that light bread was as close as the counter. Then came World War II and the government's nutrition push. White industrial bread had real critics. It was fluffy, but nutritionally stripped. So the US leaned in on enrichment campaigns, add iron and B vitamins, print bold claims on the bag, and sell moms on strong bodies. By the end of 1942, roughly 3/4 of US white bread was enriched, with posters, radio spots, and even kids' shows pushing the message. If you're wondering why older generations trusted that soft white slice, it's because Washington told them to. The loaf had a stamp of health. Now layer Jim Crow onto the plate. Segregated service and retail hostility made basic shopping a minefield. National brands rarely centered Black families in their ads, but they still wanted Black dollars. If you want the cleanest comparison of how brands behaved in that era, look at soda. Coke's Georgia power structure kept it safe and white-coated, while Pepsi deliberately built Black sales teams and ad campaigns under executives like Edward F. Boyd to court Black consumers who were being snubbed. Bread wasn't soda, but the lesson is the same. Mass brands learned to reach the missing market, even if the imagery stayed white for decades. A cheap, enriched, widely distributed loaf could cross color lines even when store counters didn't. That brings us to the Southern plate itself. Why does white bread sit next to barbecue and fried fish from Houston to Birmingham to your grandma's table? Because the tradition came out of butchers and markets selling smoked meats on the cheap in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They didn't run full kitchens. They needed filler, a utensil, a sauce mop, a grease blotter, and white bread was perfect. Soft, neutral, inexpensive, shelf-stable. Texas joints baked that ritual into the culture, and the habit spread across the South. In Black barbecue, fish fries, and hot link houses, that free slice became part napkin, part sponge, part sandwich builder. You taste it today because it worked yesterday. There's one more quieter pipeline that made white bread, and the flour that feeds it, so common in Black America. New Deal-era commodity distribution, and later food assistance programs. In the 1930s and 1940s, the federal government bought surplus staples and handed them out to low-income communities. What moved in bulk? Flour, cornmeal, peanut butter, dried milk, items that directly reinforced wheat flour cooking and cheap carbohydrate calories as everyday norms. When food stamps, now SNAP, expanded later, families could buy the same cheap, enriched loaves that government campaigns had already sanctified. The system didn't invent Wonder Bread love, but it greased the wheels of access. So is the truth deep, dark, and disturbing? Part of it is. The slice on the plate is a soft memory sitting on a hard history, Enslavement rationed corn and scarcity. Jim Crow policed counters. Industrial food culture declared purity and health through whiteness, then used enrichment to sell the fix back to the public. Commodity programs steered whole communities toward cheap staples that filled the belly even when real prosperity didn't show up. Meanwhile, black cooks did what they've always done: take what's available and make it make sense. White bread became the perfect sidekick for sauce, grease, and spice. It became the thing you could count on to stretch a plate. It became the bridge from a cornbread past to an urban store-bought present. And Wonder Bread specifically. It's the poster child because it got there first, spread the widest, and shouted the loudest, from the 1939 World's Fair exhibit to that famous "Build Strong Bodies" slogan during the enrichment era. The brand is a symbol of sliced, enriched modernity, the kind your grandma trusted because the bag said the government did too. You can side-eye the processed loaf all you want now, but culturally, that pale, pillowy triangle still tells a Black American story. How a people turn price, policy, and pain into a plate that feeds everybody at the table. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. Special thanks to these sources and historians whose work underpins this report. National Park Service and state archives on what to, enriched bread campaigns, and the rapid adoption of fortified white bread. USDA and economic history on commodity distribution, flour and cornmeal flows, and the evolution from surplus commodities to food stamps. Scholarship and narrative collections documenting enslaved diets anchored in cornmeal with limited wheat access. Social histories of industrial bread, explaining how whiteness, purity, and health narratives shaped mass-market loaves. And regional food history on why white bread became the default side at Southern barbecue joints. For specifics, see the NPS and Oregon State Archives on enrichment drives, ERS, USDA, and agency histories on flour commodity distribution, collections on enslaved foodways and WPA narratives, Southern barbecue histories tracing white bread's role, and brand histories for Wonder Bread and Pepsi's Jim Crow era Black marketing teams. Legal disclaimer. This report is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes. It draws on historical sources, public records, and scholarly research to reflect the past as accurately as possible while acknowledging gaps, biases, and limits in documentation and imagery. Viewer discretion is advised. The discussion of corporate practices, racial segregation, food industry marketing strategies, and government nutrition programs is presented strictly for historical and contextual understanding. References to brands, companies, or individuals are for context only and do not imply present-day wrongdoing, endorsement, or liability. Interpretations of events and their impact are based on available evidence and may evolve as new research emerges. Scope News aims to portray history with integrity and respect. Quotations from historians, archives, and oral histories are included to illuminate cultural memory and context. Any modern parallels discussed are offered as analysis and commentary, not as definitive legal findings. Some imagery and visual elements may be recreated or symbolic to convey historical themes where authentic photos are unavailable or restricted. Scope News makes no claim of ownership of trademarked names or logos referenced purely in a descriptive or historical manner.